is actually known all over the world for the quality of the stone craftsmen that come out of here. It's a real special thing in Maine. There's always this, notion of the Renaissance of stone carving. Well, it's not exactly a Renaissance, it's a reawakening. It's being built out of an existing tradition. Not to be critical of any other art-making methodology in the world, but this is a physical and a mental kind of procedure to deal with this material. You don't just take it and push it around. Whether you're in the mill or whether you're out there pretending you're the genius of the moment, it's really the stone rules and tells you what to do. I've known J.C. Stone, Kathy and Jamie, for a very long time. They are almost legends as far as being supportive of visual artists working in stone. And this thing that I constantly refer to as the craft of stone sculpture, which is a big deal in my world, of course. And they're very much part of the craft here in Maine.
It's been a dream of mine for probably at least 5 years now. I have been talking to Don and Dan Ucci and some of the members of the Stoneworkers Guild and said we'd love to host something here. So I called Don one afternoon and told him I had an idea and maybe we'd plan for it. And then Don calls me up and said, I don't want to wait, let's just do this.
Yeah.
So we rounded up Dave Sawaski and away we went.
As the word got around that this event was going to happen, the top people around all stepped up to the plate, found out who was going to be in it, what it was going to be about. And so we ended up with a kind of a really cohesive group that really represents the craft as it is now.
My name is Roy Patterson. I live in Gray.
Dick Alden, and I live in East Boothbay.
Paul Kozak, and I'm from Bar Harbor, Maine.
Hi, I'm Ed Kitfield. I'm from Edgecombe, Maine.
Mark Harrington. I live in Franklin, Maine.
David Sywalski, Cherryfield, Maine.
Andreas von Hühne, and I live nearby in the little town of Arousik.
Daniel Joseph Ucci, and I live over in East Pittston, Maine.
I'm Don Meserve. I live in Round Pond, Maine. I've been in the stone sculpture craft for about 30 years.
A year ago now.
A good 10 years.
12 or 13 years.
15 years.
15 years.
I've been working with stone since 1991.
25 years.
I started about 37 years ago.
They all know each other. They like being around each other. We all like being around each other. And so, for us, surprisingly, every artist of any credibility that we asked to get into the thing, they were right here. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
Oh, see? Just a little teeny weeny thing. And of course, it's great to be around all these people, some of whom are actually monsters that I release.
There are many levels that are good about working in a symposium.
For one, it gives you the opportunity to work on something really large because you have the equipment at hand to move it around. The energy of working with all the other artists is terrific. You always learn something new.
It's sort of like a community event. There's no egos involved. Everybody's willing to share their tools, their knowledge, their food, and in this case, you know, their beds. It's quite an event, and I just love feeding off that energy.
It's great to work with other sculptors and see how they're approaching a particular problem. Of course, every sculpture has its own problems to solve in terms of how to approach it, and carving it or splitting it, and grinding and polishing and all of that. So it's great to see everyone's different approach to those problems. It's also great to see different artists create different sculptures out of the same stone that maybe you would have carved something entirely different out of. So the creative process is very individual.
Working with other artists is always great. There's this energy going. You're always checking out what the other people are doing. They're checking out what you're doing. And there's this camaraderie and a little bit of competition.
Everyone involved seems to be really enjoying themselves. So that positive energy reinforces the positive energy I try to have in my work. Makes it much more fun when it's all around you rather than just from yourself.
In the studio, you end up working in a vacuum all the time. So when you're working with other people, you get ideas bounced around in a slightly different way. And it may not affect this piece that much, but it probably will affect the next piece, and hopefully for the better.
Enjoying that powerful energy, feeding off it, learning about new techniques, learning about new tools, and just the camaraderie and the energy of being with like-minded artisans. It's just a wonderful experience. Being at J.C. Stone's facility here with myriad of stone selection is an absolute treat. They're wonderful people. They've been most accommodating and very helpful to all of the artists.
Jamie and Kathy, Carl and Josh and the whole crew who work here are wonderful people, giving us all sorts of treats, you know, stone and food and things to drink, vehicles to run, places to live. It's wonderful.
It's a corporation that really is involved with our craft and understands that the craft of stone sculpture and the quarrying industry and that larger procedure is one total concern. And we're kind of all in this thing together. And Jamie and Kathy have built New England's premier stone processing mill here, handling material from all over the world.
It's just absolutely incredible to be able to see the raw product, realize how they form their models, where it comes from, the inspiration, what they see in the piece of stone. To be able to see that turn around in 7 days was absolutely amazing.
They are blindingly quick, aren't they?
Yeah,
It's kind of scary.
the energy from
it's
this
good
show
stuff.
has just been wonderful.
I think it has been. It's terrific. There's a tradition here in Maine of actually doing things and being involved with, you know, with materials like this, and actually loving what you do. You know, I mean, I've traveled all over the world, and I've never been around people who like what they do more than, you know, in this craft. I mean, we have people coming up to us every day here at this symposium saying, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted to do this.
Stone has a seduction. Sometimes we have a colleague who works in a different material and we seduce them into working in stone. Stone is facile. One can be facile with it. It seems the opposite. It seems that it's hard, impenetrable, unworkable. Quite the contrary. We live in the world of diamond saws and cup wheels and all kinds of tools that make it possible for us to achieve remarkable things directly. There's no intermediate process such as casting, mold making, pouring waxes. It's a direct form.
Stone suits my temperament, which is slow. Well, what I mean by that actually is that I find it, I started out in art as a painter, and I did that for a number of years along with sculpture, and I always found that the fact that you can just change painting so quickly, and I feel the same about clay, you can change it so quickly that it just goes too fast for me. I like to be able to take my time and sort of feel my way into the stone.
My method is that I develop a piece slowly, and then at a certain point I step back from it, and at a certain point I'll bring them to the next period of completion, you know, and that's the method I use. That's what everybody expects, and that's what I do.
I'm not putting it together, I'm working within the confines of the stone. And the stone itself brings to you this form and these textures that were formed by the glaciers. And I actually find it much more liberating.
After you study the stone a little bit, you almost have to change it, because otherwise it's so much of its own thing that it's hard to walk up to it and, you know, attack it in a way. So sometimes you just have to take one chunk off, see what's going on in there.
It's entirely a subtractive medium, really. Other forms of the sculptural arts, you can add and subtract and do that, and you can't really do that with stone. Once you take something away, you have to live with it.
The revelatory nature of working in stone is also something of an attraction. From discovering a piece that's in a quarry such as this, or in the wild, or in a gravel pit, hoping to find some relationship with that, and that evolving into discoveries all along the way through to the polishing. There's a dialogue all the way through, it's a dance all the way through, and it's joy if you listen.
It's that dance, it's that choreography of the rough and the finish, the size, the dimension, the negative space, the solid rock foundation.
You know, all somebody has to do is get one thing wrong in a choreographic experience, and it's like watching an ice skating, you know, duo where they're zipping around and all of a sudden, boom, they're on there.
Right.
You know,
And that's what it's about.
You know, it's like the world's worst moment.
It's always a sort of back and forth relationship between an idea that I have that I would like to express and what the stone suggests.
The materials tell a story, and we help the material tell a story. And then if we're like real egomaniacs, then we just treat the stone as like some kind of foil for all of our brilliance. We already know that doesn't work.
We missed the point.
Yeah, missed the point completely.
The stone and I do work together because I try to make things that the stone lends itself toward. And there's a natural beauty and power in the stone, and all I do is try to keep up with it.
I can do the same type of form over and over again with different stones, and it's always different. The process is the same. Sometimes, you know, the size is the same. They can be so much similar, yet with every stone, it feels very different. Plus the resistance of the stone, the ability to polish it, the ability to do other textures to it. And plus you get to play with all these great toys. It satisfies my need to play with tools as well as having a material that seems to resist it, but really doesn't. And then the final result is something that is otherworldly in a way. Even though it's of the earth, when you add your own mark to the material, you bring something else to it.
Because it does kind of have its own presence, its own reality, it kind of does direct the sculpture to a degree, no matter how deliberate you try to be, which brings forth invention.
You start by removing, big chunks of material as much as you can, and then you get down to smaller and smaller pieces of material that you're removing, and then finally you may get to a point, I usually get to a point where the whole design changes and has its own voice, and I go with that. I try to go with that. Usually if I try to force my initial concept and I don't listen to what the stone wants to do at that point, then I'm making mistakes. And when I don't listen, then I usually end up with the end result that I don't like.
The stone starts speaking right away. I mean, it can also start when you first look at it. It's not unusual to put a stone down and leave it for a month or two and just keep looking at it every once in a while and trying to discern what the spirit within is and what it's trying to tell you to do. So it can be any part of the process, but usually fairly early you get the sense of, again, the rhythm and the motion and what it wants you to do and how it wants you to draw its spirit, its essence out.
It does so much of the work for you that it seems to me like I'm just trying to keep up with it, and the ideas that the stone has are greater than I thought of before I ever start.
I go to a stone and I try to put the ideas that I've gotten in the modeling into the stone, and the stone pushes back. The stone usually doesn't take those ideas perfectly. And one of the things we have to do is we have to be receptive to that. And it's also about being receptive to the process.
When people see what you've done with the material, it's a document of how it was made.
The stone always informs the final product and changes it every time, usually for the better, not always.
I want people to look at my material, look at what I've done to it, and just feel good. And then as they walk out into nature and see stones lying around and think of other possibilities, I'm hoping that after they leave my sculpture, that they actually have a better appreciation of the world around them. You know, it's of nature and it's about nature, and it's also about human nature.
I just really enjoy working with something that's been here forever and ever.
The form, the texture, the finish is hard to beat.
you get lucky with this stuff, but you're also very focused and intent. And I'm loving what I'm doing.
It's an addiction.
I just love the material, so that's what keeps me coming back to it.
It's just a great joy, and I find it endlessly fascinating.
It's been just a wonderful process, very enjoyable.
For me, it's just been swimming in the soup I've been in for the last 50 years, and certainly the best 25 of it. So it's just, that part's been really good. Surprisingly, I'm not surprised that it has gone as well, because Jamie and Kathy are very organized people and very good business people, and they're very dedicated to our craft. And that's really showing, you know, all the way along. There you are.
Trying to think of when I first met him. I got to know him a little bit at the first symposium that was held at Round Top in Damariscotta. And he was instrumental in setting that up, and so that was my first major exposure to Don, which is a good thing.
I'm trying to remember where I met Don. I think I promised myself after finishing public art projects that I would visit some colleagues. I'd heard of him, so I called him up, and he was very gracious to invite me to his studio, serving me tea as is customary, and admiring his work, of course.
Every Monday I'd go to his place and chip away at a project. He was an excellent teacher and a great mentor.
And he was like, well, geez, why don't you come on down, you know, work on sculpture down here. We set up Fridays, and we would call it Art Appreciation Day.
I saw this wonderful sign on the Granite Hall store that said Sculptor Granite with an arrow pointing that way. And I drove down and met Don.
I worked the beginnings of the job with Don, and we struck up a friendship, and he encouraged me to pursue the art, and was always very free, giving advice, talking about, you know, the seriousness of art, the playfulness of art. He really was an inspiration in that respect.